Thanks. So, good morning, everyone. Dobro jutro, Belgrade. Today, I will speak about the smart contract audits in general, and I will also give you some tips on how to get the most out of them. So, my name is Tomas Bayer, and I'm a COO at Ackee Blockchain. My role is not technical, I'm more a commercial guy, and I'm responsible for operations and the business development in Ackee Blockchain. For those who would like to keep in touch or just to chat about the security, feel free to use the QR code and it will take you to my Twitter account. So, about the Ackee Blockchain, we are smart contract auditors. We have two teams, one for Solana and one dedicated to Ethereum. That's the bigger one, actually. We are 15 people in total, so the team is quite small, but the aim is not to be the biggest, but to be the best and to work with the top-tier protocols in the space. A part of auditing, we also develop our own tools. The one for Ethereum is called Vogue, and we got a grant from Coinbase for that. It's a Python-based development and testing framework for Solidity. It's open source, so everybody can benefit from that. We also onboard developers to blockchain. We organize the online courses, School of Solana and School of Solidity, and our founder and auditors are teaching blockchain on Czech Technical University in Prague. So we raised already more than 1,000 developers. Yeah, I will mention some of our clients. You probably know some of them. Names like Axelar, 1inch, or Safe. And most of the names you see on the screen are actually our regular clients, because the best results from auditing you get from the long-term partnership. We also received the grants from Solana Foundation and the Ethereum Foundation. Topics I will cover today are three. I will start with the selection of auditor, what should you ask for, and what should you look at when deciding which auditor is the best match for your project. Then I will go through the best practices, and what I mean by that is the best practices before the audit and during the audit. And I will also walk you through the next steps after the finished audit. So let's jump straight to the first part, the selection of the auditor. So what to consider? It's technical level of the team, head clients, and the issue discovery efficiency, reference, and the past audit reports. So technical level of the team, actually you don't need to have the auditor sitting right in front of you to get somehow the impression. The good team should ask you technical questions about your project in order to get to know you better and to actually deeply understand your project. But from time to time, what happened to us when some BDs reach us out to ask about our service or to make some cooperation, they stop us during the call and say something like, guys, the call is getting too technical and you speak only about the security. And actually, the other companies, this and this, that is your competitor, for example, offered us that they will implement for free their KYC solution if you decide to make an audit with us. So what are your selling points? I mean, how is this connected to the smart contract security, right? This is a red flag, so this is crazy. I mean, we're not selling the vacuum cleaners here, and yeah, you should always focus on the technical experience of the team. So this is what I mean by the point security first and not marketing. And you should always also check for the backgrounds of the auditors, because it's not about the references of the whole team, but the auditor that is dedicated specifically to review your project should be familiar with the protocol you are building on, or audited previously the project that is very similar to yours. Then, hacked clients, issue discovery efficiency. You should ask for some figures, for some numbers, and if the auditor is not picking only the low-hanging fruits. What I mean by that, I put here a table. In the first column, you can see every single auditor. In the second column, you see the time needed to discover an issue in average. And in the right column, it shows how many days it takes to discover a critical or high severity issue. So in the bottom line, you can see that in average, every day our auditor discovers one issue, and every 5th day he discovers a critical or high severity issue. Yeah, in these days, we noticed several so-called auditors who are only running the code through the tools in order to maximize the amount of low-severity issues and informational issues, and that's actually not what you want. You can see that, for example, in our case, the amount of critical and high issues are almost equal to low-severity issues. So what I mean by that is that 90% of the job should be in the manual code review, when the auditors go through the code base line by line and locally deploying the contracts in order to try the specific hacks and attacks. This is how you discover critical and high severity issues. References, you should always ask for them. So, of course, it's nice to have top-tier protocols between the references, but you should always look at the relevant projects to yours. So whether it's a protocol you are building on or a really similar protocol to yours, these are the things to keep in mind. Reputable companies should always have available, like, wide range of available public reports. And my suggestion would be not to look only at the executive summary, but also really read through the single findings and issues stated in the report, because it can really give you an idea about the approach of the team and the auditing methodology. The best case scenario for you is if there is a scope that was audited by multiple companies. So you can really compare and benchmark the reports, which approach suits you better. The second part, the best practices. I will cover the code freeze. I will speak about the tooling and test coverage, documentation, the scope, dev support, security mix, and I also included the pre-audit checklist, so you can maybe just in mind make your check marks whether it's your project ready to be audited. So code base really needs to be almost production ready at a specific commit. So you shouldn't make any changes during the audit in your code base, because almost always it results in the need of the re-audit and additional costs for the project. About the tooling and test coverage, your test coverage should be at least at 95%. And it's really handy to have an extensive test suite, because the tests can discover bugs, and more bugs in the report drives you to overhead. So you should try to actually save the auditor's time for auditing in order to get the strong auditing output. For the Solidity fans, you can use Foundry, or you can use Python-based Vogue. Further, I will also mention that every audit starts with the static analysis, and yeah, actually, if you perform it before the audit, you can save your time. For that, use Slitter or Vogue, but Vogue usually gets less false positives. Documentation. Well, I know that you probably know, but you would be surprised that in these days it's not actually that automatic and natural, so I will say it. The code should be continuously documented during the development process. What should you provide to the auditor before the audit begins? It's architecture graphs, project flows, and functional requirements. You should also add the white paper and the video walkthrough through the code base in the best case scenario. Scope. You should always clearly specify all the contracts that should be audited and the ones that we should take as a black box. So also be careful with cutting the scope. From time to time, we hear the clients saying something like, okay, we forked this, we forked that, and utilized only this small part, so audit will be really tiny. At the end of the day, of course, it's up to the client what he wants us to audit, but yeah, keep in mind that if you rely on the code base that was changed after the last audit, it's pretty risky, and you should be careful with that. This is how some set stories begin. There should be always somebody from the dev team who supports auditors, whether there are any questions or some uncertainties, but also to react on discovered critical issues. Because just to explain, the low severity issues, medium and high severity issues, we keep and we report them at the end in the audit report. But in case of critical issues, we report them right away, so the dev team have more time to actually fix those issues. And what also sometimes happens, and in the past, yeah, this year we had also one example of that. Actually, when there's a time pressure and the project has scheduled launch and went live on mainnet before it was properly audited, yeah, it happened like three months ago. We actually woke up the development team in the US that we discovered a critical issue in their launched project. So you can imagine that it was quite a tough night for the developers. Security mix. It's always recommended to have more than one audit, at least for your core part of the code base. But I would like also to mention that the best auditors are often the internal teams and the developers, because they are the ones who discover most issues and catches main amount of the bugs. So to sum it up, 2 or more third-party audits, tests, internal audit, and it's also handy to have a bug bounty program. Yeah, and here is the promised pre-audit checklist, so you can make your check marks if your project is, for example, ready to be audited. And it's ready to be audited if your project is ready to be frozen, is compilable, is accessible for the auditors from day one, contains a full NUTSPEC documentation, has a comprehensive technical documentation, has a walkthrough video for auditors, follows the Solidity style guide, contains an extensive test suite, and has a past audit reports, if there are any. So what are the next steps and what happens after the audit? In our case, it's readout session. then the fix review and the re-audit, and then comes the marketing. You see, marketing comes last, not first. So after the audit, we always schedule a readout session where we actually, auditor, read through the report, all the findings and issues he discovered, and explains them in detail to the development team. He also suggests the fixes. So now the development team should perform their fixes and also add their comments. Because, for example, if the auditor discovers an issue and the development team says that it's actually not an issue, but the behavior is intentional, we mark the issue in the report as acknowledged. So you should always ask the auditor before you make a handshake what's covered and what's included in the budget of the audit. So everything I mentioned, in our case, is included, but of course, if you significantly change the code base or you make a change of the contract logic, then this is something where needs to be done the re-audit. So after that, you should consider publishing the report, because of course you do that for yourself in the first place, but you do that also for your users, and you want to be probably as transparent as possible. So at the end, as we are proud of our work, we always help to market the report to our customers, whether we agree on the Medium article or we make a blog post. Sometimes we schedule a Twitter space where we discuss how overall audit went, what issues have been discovered. And yeah, we really enjoyed it, and we somehow celebrate the security assessment that happened. Okay, as my talk is approaching the end, let me summarize it in a very simple thought. Once the user funds are involved in your project, the security should become your #1 priority, because there are real people behind the avatars, and the blockchain never forgets. The reputation you have is only one, so act accordingly. Thank you very much. Hvala lepa.